Yeah, so let's look at some more herbal remedies. Hydrophobia is mostly, hydro means water, phobia means fear, so that's fear of water. That's some kind of a nervous kind of condition, basically an old term for it. So they're using lobelia to settle the nerves and skull cap for the nerves. So they're basically using things for the nerves here. Hiccups is again a digestive problem, trying to alkaline the system. Since it gets too acid and it goes into the hiccup kind of state. So we use the blue cohosh, the dill, the Indian hemp, and the orange juice. Sometimes lemon, raw lemon squeeze and ginger and gargle will relieve the condition, or chew it on a licorice stick or something of that nature. For hair, to stimulate the growth, the Indian hemp, nettle is the most popular herb used for the hair, by the way. Rosemary prevents hair from falling out, so you would use nettle and rosemary. Rosemary increases the blood to the skull, blood perfusion to the brain as well. Then we have sage and peach and burdock. But I would say the nettle and rosemary would be probably the most popular combination. For gray hair, you would use sage rinse. Hay fever, again we're back to this mucus congestion. We're using the mullein, the colt's foot, and of course the skunk cabbage is good for the lungs. Heartburn, which is again indigestion, it's food fermenting. It causes, when it ferments, it makes gas. So we're back to the digestive type herbs that you find in your kitchen, the oregano, the fennel, the marjoram, all of those kind of herbs you find right in your kitchen for the indigestion. Now for the heart itself, that's another issue. Maybe your heart is not beating correctly, maybe you have murmurs, maybe you have fibrillation. For the heart, the herb for that is hawthorn berries. Hawthorn berries, that's the one you would use for all these conditions involving the heart. But if you want to get real specific, you can use some angelica with hawthorn berries for the palpitations in the heart. For borage, borage to strengthen the heart, so you use hawthorn berries with borage to strengthen your heart. To stimulate your heart, you would use cayenne and hawthorn berries, but always using the hawthorn berries in conjunction with these remedies. Hemorrhoids is varicose veins of the anus. Some people may try to shrink them with the shepherd's purse and with the white oak bark applied directly to the area, made into poultices. Some people, to relieve the condition, would have to use some slippery elm powder mixed in water or juice to help relieve the stress on the rectum, because a lot of people strain. Aloes is a laxative, so when people strain at the toilet, it can produce hemorrhoids, which comes from constipation, which may be coming from improper food combining or stress. Headaches, well, for headaches we go into the thyme, which is good for headaches, feverfew, which is good for headaches, which is enlisted. But just to calm the system, we use the catnip and the colt's foot and the peppermint. Rhubarb is a laxative, so you wouldn't use that for headaches. You may want to use the rosemary with the feverfew, the rosemary with the feverfew for pain in the head, or you would use the feverfew with something like St. John's wort. But you wouldn't necessarily use all these herbs because they're coming from different angles here. Some are coming through for laxatives, some are calming the digestive tract, some is for mucus, some are calmatives. So I would suggest you just stick with your feverfew and your St. John's wort, or maybe some rosemary with the feverfew and St. John's wort, something of that sort. Hoarseness, marshmallow, licorice stick, slippery elm, golden seal, a few drops of lobelia, just a little bit of lobelia, not much. Wild cherry sticks or wild cherry tea, hyssop, horehound. As you can see, we're back into the respiratory type herbs. The hyssop, horehound, mullein, colt's foot, skunk cabbage are used for colds. Hemorrhaging, that just means bleeding. We want to shut it down. You could use a astringent like golden seal, or you can use some wild alum, which will stop the bleeding. You can use fleabane, but the ones that you can find readily would be the comfrey. The comfrey and the shepherd's purse will be ideal for that. Comfrey, shepherd's purse, white oak bark, witch hazel, which is another astringent. So if you want to get really astringent with this, you use the strongest one, the wild alum root, or you can use astringent teas like witch hazel, the comfrey, and the shepherd's purse. They are astringent, will help stop the bleeding. Head trouble, water to the head. We're using astringents like sage. We're using the diuretics, the juniper berries, kubi berries, or you can use rosemary in conjunction with it. Use rosemary, which increases